All right, let's get ready to get energized. It is John Tostanoski here with EG4 Electronics. It is the Power Hour, live episode 2. And I have here with me Mr. Nick Manto from the Solar Scouts, aka Solar Nick. Is that what they call you these days?
That's me, Nick Manto, founder CEO of the Solar Scouts. Yes, sir.
I love it, man. It's funny, this is the second Nick we've had on the show.
Yeah.
We had Nick Pavley from Eclipse Solar, probably one of your competitors, but I think in the solar industry, one of the things we got to get better at is learning to love one another in a way, because we're all fighting against the utility grid. We're all in the business of taking people really off grid. Even if you have a grid tied solar system, the goal is to reduce your consumption from the utility, the giant monster that is the utility.
Absolutely, and you got to have the abundance mindset in this industry. And right now, Texas, we've got a 4 or 5% adoption rate residentially. So what I think SEIA talks about how like 25% of homes in Texas are going to have solar in the next decade or two. So there's millions upon millions of people. There's not enough service providers out here, and especially not enough quality service providers.
Yeah, absolutely. And with things like some of these, even the utility is adopting it, right? With things like battery rebate programs that are really like what we call virtual power plants.
Oh, yeah.
Ultimately, some of those programs work to put power back into the grid. And they use that from your battery, right? So it's really interesting, the different things that we're seeing in this space. I've got my notes here so that I can make sure that we stay on script, right? Some of the feedback that we got is we want to make sure that we dive into some of the awesome technical products that we have. So we're going to keep it technical, and we'll also keep it light. I want to learn a little bit about you and your business, some of the reasons why you decided to make the switch to EG4, and also talk to the audience about 2 amazing new products that we have coming out. So if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of just break into that a little bit. Want to talk first about the FlexBOSS18 and what, just so I can ask, what inverter option are you using from our lineup right now primarily?
Historically, we used the 18K PV, so the hybrid inverter, and we're transitioning or in the transition process to using the FlexBOSS18 GridBoss combo.
Okay.
So it's been really exciting to learn more about that and get that powered up on some folks' homes.
Yeah, absolutely. So the FlexBOSS21, when we released that product, it was groundbreaking. 21 kilowatt of PV DC usable input, 16 kilowatt AC continuous output in combination with the GridBoss. You're now utilizing that unit as a smart panel, right? Because it has the ability to basically operate as a smart panel for 4 smart loads, 125 amps on the first breaker unit. Then you have 80 amps, and then 60 and 60. And then it also has the ability to do a full 200 amp grid pass through. Amazing technical feature set and capability. What we did find though is that the FlexBOSS21 is larger than the 18K PV, and we know that it's an amazing solution. It's really good in Texas, right? It's really good in some of the states where you see larger PV arrays. Right, because the thing about Texas is we use so much electricity here. I would say probably 50% of the neighborhoods in Texas, because especially North Texas, right? They're building and building and building. It's the #1 most moved to state. And the utilities out here are not running gas lines, right? They're not running natural gas lines to power your home. So you need a lot of PV and you need a lot of battery storage to be able to really take yourself to an energy independence mindset. But we know, and it's probably a great fit for Texas as well. We know that the FlexBOSS21 is a massive inverter solution, not in its footprint. It's a very compact footprint, but it's a big power output. And we wanted a direct replacement to the 18K PV. And obviously the 18 kPV has been, you know, I guess I want to say our flagship inverter for quite some time. Now the FlexBOSS21 has kind of taken that over in our lineup. But the FlexBOSS18 is here to really be another set of the next generation lineup that we call the BOSS lineup, which is your balance of solar system. And the FlexBOSS18, to talk about some of the specifications, 18 kilowatt PV DC usable input in a bit of a smaller footprint and framework than the FlexBOSS21. So it's going to fit on the home just as well as the FlexBOSS21. So you have 18 kilowatt PV DC usable input that you can put, you know, from string PV in there. You have 13 kilowatt of AC continuous output.
So a little bit of an upgrade from the 18K PV.
A little bit of an upgrade. With PV present, you have 13 kilowatt. And what's unique about that? 13 kilowatt AC output with PV present, so far as I know, and I wish I could because I'm so excited to release the pricing on this. I can't do it just yet. I've been told by the EG4 gods above and by our fearless leaders, James Showalter and Mr. Troy Asbury, I've been told, hey, John, I know you're excited about it, but hold off. But I want to say it's going to come in at a price point that, I guess the way to frame this is 13 kilowatt AC continuous output, and there will be no one else on the market that has a solution with that power output at the price point that we serve it at. It will be far more competitive. And I think that's one of the value propositions of our product, is that you get a ton of quality and a ton of value without price gouging to the installer, which ultimately gets passed on to the end consumer. Right. So we have a huge DIY audience too, and they're looking for solutions that has the scalability and the flexibility, right? Because when you look at some of the, let's say, microinverter products out there, you know, there's not a lot that you can do to work or manipulate that system in a way that's going to serve you in an off-grid scenario. And in fact, many solutions out there don't even work off-grid as well as on-grid with sellback like our equipment does. So it's really unique.
Will the 18K Flex have a slightly smaller footprint than the 18K PV, just because what you did with the 21 is removed some of the in the 18K hybrid, you have necessary stuff in there, and you've kind of taken that out to plug into the GridBoss product, and so should reduce the footprint of your FlexBOSS18?
Absolutely. It's going to have a reduced footprint. And then, you know, one of the things is when you're pairing that with, when you're pairing a FlexBOSS18, primarily, and it stands on its own. You can do a FlexBOSS18 just as well as a FlexBOSS21 with our for a UL 9540 rated ESS, right? It's important, even for the DIY community, it's important to be in compliance.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that we really hold ourselves to a high standard of here is we release products, we ensure they're in compliance, and we ensure that it follows the NEC code footprints.
And so with or without the GridBoss functionality, standalone, your FlexBOSS 18K, 21K has the ATS, automated transfer switch, built into that.
Yeah.
So you could do that standalone. The value of adding in your GridBoss is having some of those smart load features, being able to break out backup loads versus non-backup loads. And so somebody that maybe has a larger load profile in their homes can say, you know what, we're not trying to throw the Super Bowl Sunday party. We're not trying to throw the 4th of July party and keep everything powered up. We can say, you know what, this is a lower priority in an outage event. We want to extend the length of time that we can keep our most critical circuits, rooms, maybe medical devices powered during an outage. So that way we've got just more energy security.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a really good thing to bring up that I think a lot of competitors in the market don't address, is there's a difference between what the inverter does and what the battery does, right? The inverter is going to give you the ability to power the home. It powers loads in the home.
It's your muscle.
That's your muscle, right?
The GridBoss is now the brains.
The GridBoss is now the brains, and your battery is your endurance. That gives you the amount of time that you can have those loads powered for. And one other thing with the GridBoss is the reason why, yes, the FlexBOSS18 and the FlexBOSS21, they stand on their own. But from a cost of installation perspective and from an ease of installation perspective, it's almost like, you know, we're constantly creating products to try and be the home of the one-day install. You know, we want to get there. We want to make solutions for installers and for end users alike that make it easy, simple. And one of the other things with when you pair the FlexBOSS21 or the FlexBOSS18 with the GridBoss, now you're reducing your overall cost to install, because in most cases, it's not going to necessitate the need for service disconnect because it's built in. You might not need a main panel upgrade anymore, right? Because you can essentially change, you can change breakers on the GridBoss. And then your manual transfer switch or your knife switch, that or inverter bypass, right? Heaven forbid anything did go wrong. You have the ability to bypass that and run grid power straight through. And that all happens by way of your GridBoss. So it really does a lot of unique things. Some of the other feature sets I want to hit on, off-grid with our FlexBOSS18, you're going to get 10 kilowatt of output, meaning no PV present, and grid is not present. If you have grid and PV present, you get your 13 kilowatt. I'm sorry, if you have battery and PV present, you get your 13 kilowatt. If you have no PV, it's at night, right? You're going to have 10 kilowatt, and if that's if the grid goes down. It's an amazing feature set. 2 MPPTs that are rated at 26 amps each, and that's going to give you the ability essentially to run 4 strings of solar, which is amazing. And then you can pair that with some of our industry partners for optimizers, and then it's an amazing product. So what are some of your other thoughts?
Yeah, I want to circle back to something you brought up earlier, which was the population rise in Texas, especially, right? Greatest state in the nation, greatest country in the world. Everybody wants to live in Texas. There's other factors driving the demand for electricity in Texas, right? It's 2025, March today. It's supposed to double in the next 5 years. The amount of electricity we use in Texas is going to double in 5 years.
Yeah.
And so population gain is one factor in that. Second is what you mentioned. Developers typically are who bears the cost of creating the utilities in those neighborhoods. And so they're saving money by not delivering gas utility in. There's, of course, a huge trend towards heat pumps for heating, some of those other energy efficiencies, which to a off-grid loving community is actually a good thing, because now you can truly power your whole home self-sustaining, self-sufficiently with solar and batteries. Other things driving demand in Texas are more and more of your neighbors are driving electric vehicles. Instead of fueling up at the gas pumps, they're plugging those vehicles in. And then really the key and critical driver of the electricity demand increase in Texas is data centers.
Oh, 100%.
And a lot of people don't think about that, right? We talk a lot about AI and cryptocurrency and cloud storage, where this video is being filmed and going to be supported on whatever platforms it's on YouTube. The cloud is not a fictitious place. It is a warehouse full of computers, and those computers are just consuming silly amounts of electricity. And for a similar reason, people love Texas, corporations love Texas. It's regulatorily friendly, so it's easy to get the construction permits to build these data centers. We've got a huge population in and of ourselves, so we need a lot of cloud compute to support everybody. And then we're also geographically relevant to the central US, Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana. And so now, instead of those data center contracts going to a West Virginia or somewhere on the West Coast, now that data can be housed right here in Texas. And so if our electricity demand doubles in a really short period of time, what's going to continue to happen to the rates that people are paying?
Yep, absolutely. It's interesting. About I want to say a month ago, I was in the Metro Phoenix area. I was able to meet up for lunch with my cousin, and he's new to the workforce, really smart young man. He is in the AI space, and he actually, he works for a startup, and what he does is manages the energy draw out of data centers. And he was talking about, and they're AI data centers. And he was talking about the correlation between the demand on the grid and the demand from these AI data centers. And the point that he made was, he was like, dude, John, everyone is going to need to be energy independent by way of PV, solar, and battery. They need to be their own microgrid.
Yeah.
And he was basically saying, if AI continues to grow while coinciding with the growth that we've seen in EV, and I actually can speak to this as a fact, before I got into the solar industry, about 5 years ago or so, I was in the automotive industry, and I worked for an automotive manufacturer, and at that time, the last role I held there was working to build out the EV charger ecosystem. So in some of those initial conversations back then, they were saying if everyone plugged in their car all at once, the utility infrastructure would fail.
Yeah.
And now I'm hearing that combined with the same things I'm hearing now about AI data centers, is that the grid is unsustainable. The grid is technically unreliable at this point, and that's why we're seeing more and more people make the switch, not just to solar to kind of shave off some of their utility rates, because that's really all that does nowadays. You really need energy storage systems that are robust, like the EG4 products, and we need that work to be done by, you know, folks like yourselves that are experts in the area that can really provide an amazing solution for a homeowner or for a light commercial application, you know, stuff like that. We really need it because the amount of demand that we will continue to see is unprecedented, and we need to become independent.
Something that you just touched on there, you know, reminds me about, you know, all up until recently, homeowners in Texas could get away with a solar only or a PV only system. And the way that we would trade electricity in the deregulated market, meaning if you're in Encore, CenterPoint, Texas and Mexico Power, AEP territories, you have that power to choose your electricity provider. In the early 2020s and 2010s, you could truly eliminate your grid power bill simply by producing your electricity during the day while still drawing or importing that power from the grid at night. And what a lot of folks have experienced is the ground shifting from underneath them, where many of these REPs, the retail electric providers, are now excluding the transmission fees from their energy fax labels, which means your solar system is going to reduce and eliminate your energy charges.
Yep.
However, at night, you're still going to import from the grid and you'll be billed for the transmission fees. And so how that ends up shaping up in our experience in Texas is roughly 60% of the time, if you've got a PV only system, you would still import from the grid. And so mathematically, you could wash out your energy charges, you could reduce your transmission fees by 40% with a PV only system. And so that leaves you still exposed to the rising prices because all those transmission utilities are increasing their transmission fees more than once a year and outside of or inside of your contract period. So if you're in an agreement with whatever your retailer is, it doesn't matter. Encore, CenterPoint, AEP, TNMP can still increase their transmission fees even though you've got a fixed rate contract with whomever.
Yep.
And so that's where batteries now, like we have a 95% battery attachment rate on our systems today, on our original systems. And I've retrofitted more batteries into existing solar systems in the last few months than I've done batteries in the initial few years of doing solar.
And do you find one of the we know that we came from primarily the off-grid and the DIY market, and we are so thankful for the support that we've gotten across those communities, and we will continue to support those communities. That's who made us what we are today. But it's an obvious thing that EG4 has really gained a ton of market share in the mainstream installation space, working with professional installers like yourselves. And we've actually really surprised a lot of people. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of our entire team here of that. But one of the reasons, I think, from a technical feature set that allows us to do that is the ease of AC coupling. So do you want to kind of take us through your experience as being an installer? Why is it that the EG4 feature set it makes it easy for AC coupling?
It really is super simple, where we don't really have to mess with the existing system at all. There's no detach and reinstall required. We're not having to swap out your existing micros or anything else, right? You're just gonna take whether the original system was installed on a backfed breaker or if it was a line side tap, you're just rerouting that. Instead of landing your combiner box, or right, if you've got a string inverter, landing that directly into the MSP, you're just gonna land that into your either grid or FlexBOSS, whatever setup that you've got going, into the AC port. Actually, the FlexBOSS doesn't have AC anymore.
Yeah, it would be in the GridBoss.
In the GridBoss. So you just land it in the GridBoss. For the homeowner, they get to keep all the existing functionality and monitoring of their historic system, right? So whatever monitoring application they were already using, that doesn't change at all, right? So the GridBoss is sending that electrical signal back to the grid signal, back to the inverter combiner box to keep that powered up and running.
Yep.
Now, in addition, right, if you're adding more PV, great, you land that in the DC, and you've got your existing system landed in the AC, you see your DC PV production, you see your AC gen production.
Yep.
All alongside and coinciding together, and it is a piece of cake to install. And the way at least we've gone about installing your products is just utilizing the automated transfer switch. And so, I come from more of a standby automated generator. That's how I got my feet wet into the industry.
Okay.
I was trying to get into the solar space when it was in its infancy in Texas, and took a generator job, learned a lot about that. What I found about Texans especially is we like to know how stuff works. It's not enough to just
and that's everywhere. I'm finding a lot of people in California, they find the same thing, right? They find the same thing, is that they've seen some of the things you mentioned, is that they want to know how it works. We were just out in California last week. They want to know how it works. They want to know the feature set. They want it to be easy to install. The homeowners want it to be easy to install all the way through. And then to your point, in terms of, kind of the changing in rates in your buyback structure, that wave started on the West Coast of the United States and it came out this way. And it's not just a United States thing. We have a global presence, really. We have a lot of the grid insecurity overall. We have a huge presence in Puerto Rico, which is obviously, it's a part of the U.S., but they are on their own grid. And they have the same grid instability and insecurity problems that we do here. If not, they're kind of exacerbated there. They're a lot bigger because they're an island all on themselves, and they need robust solutions that are, like you said, easy to work with. One thing you mentioned is you had said, I came from the generator space, and I want to lead into kind of like a generator. Let's call it a battery generator. Let's call it a battery energy storage system enclosure, and that is our BOSSBOX. It is basically a 53-inch by 48-inch by 31-inch, whatever those dimensions really look like. If you were at Intersolar, you would have seen it in person. Definitely check us out at the trade shows. Ultimately, what it is a battery energy storage system enclosure.
It's like a big utility box.
It's like a big utility box, and you can load up 3 of our all-weather wall mount batteries to get 42.9 kilowatt hours of storage in one unit, and you can land 2 hybrid inverter units on the outside, and it's kind of like you can land a 12 kPV, an 18 kPV. You know, if you want to step up into the newer lineup and get all those great feature sets, you can do a FlexBOSS18 and a FlexBOSS21. And the idea is there's a couple different ideas. One, this is an amazing solution for new homes that don't have that natural gas, or even if they do, I mean, natural gas can freeze. We saw that in Texas during the Snowmageddon, as they call it. Natural gas lines froze.
And it's pumps, and pumps are powered by electricity. Or a few years ago in Dallas, a tornado ripped through that Richardson area.
Yep.
And they had to shut the gas lines down. So if you had a standby automated natural gas generator, you are equally as out of luck as your neighbor that doesn't have it, because you can't get gas if those lines have ruptured.
Equally exposed. And so one of the thought processes is that this BOSSBOX, and we're so excited to release it out to the world at a very competitive price point without sacrificing quality, easy to install, all the things that you would expect from EG4. It is basically the first thought process is that it's an electric standby generator, right? So it's a battery energy storage enclosure system. You can load up 42.9 kilowatt hours of storage. That's enough for a full days of power. If you look at the Department of Energy, the US DOE, they're going to say that the average home uses about 36.7 kilowatt hours a day, average, right? We know in Texas we might see a little bit more, right? It's going to go a little higher. But across the US, and this is good for every market, you can plant that on a pad, on a concrete pad, put your 1 or 2 hybrid inverters on the sides of it, and now you have basically a locked and loaded, ready to go. And the idea is in future, pre-commissioned system that is your standby generator option, and it simply charges from the grid. PV is not necessarily required. Another use case that I really see, me personally, this use case hits home for me. Before I came to EG4, I was working with an installation company doing sales and operations. And we had a tendency to do a lot of ground mount systems, right? We were on the west side of Fort Worth, which, you know, when you start going out that way, that you get into the bigger
Rutherford, Aledo,
ranches and stuff like that out there. So we would always do, you know, selling solar door to door on these ranches, right? And we would walk into a lot of people that needed a solution, and it was ground mount. Well, one of the challenges with ground mount is it's very time consuming to install. And it also requires a ton of trenching, and a lot of times there's two-way trenching. The use case I see that I really like is you have your ground mount array, okay? That's outside in the yard or wherever it is. You've got a ground mount array. You've got potentially your BOSSBOX somewhere to the side of it, and then you land a GridBoss on the home. And that's where your utility service entrance is, and you trench one line out there.
Yeah, that was definitely the problem, or you were previously choosing, what am I going to sacrifice here, right?
Yep.
If it's a long trench, then you've got the voltage drop from PV, trying to get that all the way over to your wall-mounted inverter and your batteries next to your meter breaker. Or it was sacrificing cost efficiencies where you got to run the meter electricity all the way back to, and then run that all the way back to your loads in the home. And so here, that really resolves that, where you can invert that electricity right next to your PV production, run one trench, your inverter to GridBoss connection line, plug that into the GridBoss, and then that's your ATS served right next to meter and loads. And that really resolves those two things.
It resolves a ton of problems for again, you know, whether you're installing it yourself. You know, we always recommend, you know, if you can have a professional installer install it, but ultimately it's really, you know, it solves a lot of problems no matter who's installing it, and it makes the installation much easier, a lot less time consuming. Some of the other things I want to hit on before we wrap up, I just want to ask, I guess I got two questions. One, I want to go back to something that we were talking about actually before the show started, which was kind of some of your interest in some of the concert stuff. We'll talk about that. But also I want to talk about just in general, what are some things that you're seeing in the industry? Is there anything else that you found that was either easy or difficult to transition to EG4? We're a very open and honest company here. What kind of products did you come from installing, and maybe what made you transition to EG4?
Absolutely. Yeah, so like probably most other places, we were doing a lot of just micro inverter installations.
Okay.
And what really prompted the transition was the shift in the deregulated market. And
you had mentioned that, yeah.
So for somebody to get an economic gain from their solar system, you really need a battery solution. And so, we were doing some other battery products, and they are very proud of their pricing a lot of times. And of course, we were already getting folks some of those phone calls about, hey, now I'm all of a sudden getting these grid power bills. It was working fine, and now I'm getting these grid power bills. What's going on? And so we needed a solution to easily retrofit those systems in. And so some of the things I love about EG4 is, A, you're based right here in Texas.
All the Texans love that.
Well, and the rest of the nation, you're based in America, right?
Yeah.
That is critical, because when you're installing and commissioning a system and you call in to technical support, you're calling Sulphur Springs, Texas. Right?
Yeah.
When there's something on the monitoring app that we're not seeing, or if I need to enroll somebody in a free nights plan to gamify how that grid's working right now, I'm emailing with a technical support person here in Sulphur Springs. And so just the communication in general, where it's, Texans talking to Texans, so that's helpful. Hyper responsive, and we know that you've got field people too that'll come out and work with us in the field if needed. But most of the time we can, do it over the phone, and just working with our journeyman electricians and your technical experts makes it so smooth, such a piece of cake, very responsive. And a focus on innovation as well, which is critical. There's all sorts of advantages and different product types to really perfect what each of our clients are seeking, a solution that's designed for them.
I've never been a part of a company before that has the ability to make the changes that we're making so quickly. And it's because you can by the way, I love my job. So the bags under my eyes are just simply because we're going really fast, because we see how quickly the industry is changing, and we're trying to meet the demand of ultimately the homeowner. That's who you serve, right? Mm-hmm. You are a servant to your customer. You're a servant to the homeowner. And that's what we need that's who we need to look out for, is the people that will be impacted by, again, the insecurity in the grid, the instability in the grid, rising energy prices, or just simply the need to want to go off grid. All these different factors, our feature sets, our products combine all of that into one. It's an amazing, especially the FlexBOSS21, Flex18. Really excited for everyone to see the Flex18, the BOSSBOX, the GridBoss, and its smart load capabilities, all of that stuff that a lot of other folks, quite frankly, don't have, and they don't have it at the price point that we offer it at, and the level of quality and support that we offer it at. I think it's just really important that we continue to run fast so that we can keep up with the market and continue to serve the people that you need to serve, which is your homeowners. And we want to make it easy and good for you. Last thing I want to wrap up on, I thought this was pretty cool. We worked with a company called Overdrive in the past, and we had supported some concerts and shows. And what was it that you were mentioning about you kind of brought this to light, and then I was looking around the room and I'm like, didn't we support that?
Yeah, we yesterday I was talking to Callie about it, and when I went to school out at Texas Tech, I was in the Going Band from Murderland and some of the other athletic bands while I was out there. I'm a trumpet player. So I've got so many friends that are music educators or music performers, some that are in our military bands. One of my buddies runs a mariachi group in LA. And so I had an internship with Live Nation. So I stay really in the know in music and that type of culture. And, I got a little jealous, or my ears perk up when I see some of these major artists that we know and love that are saying, hey, my tours, my concerts, when you come to my shows, they're powered by renewable energy. And so I saw an article a couple years ago about Overdrive and one of their big name artists and how they go to market. And when Callie mentioned the BOSSBOX to me the other day, that was the first place my mind went, was you could mount something like that on semis and have, an emergency response, or so sorry, that's a different vertical potentially for you, but
a deployable option.
And so in a different previous life, I also worked in the distribution space. I was serving grocers and stuff like that. And a grocer gaining popularity in DFW and already ultra popular in Central Texas and Houston areas is HEB. Who doesn't love a good HEB?
Oh yeah, classic.
And what Callie found interesting was they have an emergency response team.
Yeah.
So when a hurricane barrel happens, there are HEB associates that are a part of their response team that go and support that community. And so, they could be a very interesting candidate for a solution like a already commissioned, ready to go, just turn it on type of solution, like a semi-trailer full of BOSS boxes and batteries and inverters to help people when these huge events come. So
100%.
What I know you and I love doing is we like helping homeowners be prepared, so that way you're not finding yourself in an emergency scenario. You're already set up to be off grid and sustain life off grid without being dependent on your transmission provider supporting you in that time. But it's also nice to have some of these immediate and emergency teams that can go and support communities in their time of need.
Deployable options, stuff like that. It's something that we don't see a lot of other people getting into in the, in the ESS space, the energy storage system space. And I think like we're well suited to do that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is EG4 has provided battery solutions and inverter solutions to these overdrive events, awesome. Right? Which is really cool. And I think that just speaks to the level of true ruggedness that our product actually has. Like a lot of competitors out there, they say, oh yeah, this is whole home backup. You read the spec sheet. No, it's not. Right. That's not how that works. I'm seeing your spec sheet. We can really get there with our solutions with the right number of batteries, the right number of inverters, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's three, but we can get there.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a big differentiator. I'm sorry, what else were you going to say?
You brought something else up earlier that is like super, I would say, industry niche colloquial, but VPP, virtual power plants.
Yeah.
And there are some other major players in the space that own an REP right now that are already doing some of this VPP stuff. Is EG4 working on any like REP level type stuff to?
That is a great question. I can tell you that we are very, very close to being able to leverage our solution set with some of the larger battery energy sharing programs, like Excellent. A virtual power plant.
There's already some that, right?
There's some we're on already, and those really are some of the smaller ones. Yeah,
you don't even really need to be on, right? There's already REPs out there that do this time of use style valuation of the kilowatt hours.
Yeah,
I think right now it's might be a little more manual for a homeowner. Just within like the software settings, if I had, or if one of our clients has one of these setups, I already know like we can manually input. Like if somebody wants to be in a free nights plan, right? Charge the batteries at night, supplement solar production during the day. Is there any type of setting in the software that tracks the commodity price or wholesale price of electricity in Texas that's gonna
That
more
is
or
something
less
that we're
interact?
working on.
Okay.
That is something that we're working on because one of the big value propositions to our equipment is the fact that you don't necessarily have to have PV installed, right? Obviously, it increases the value proposition that much more to have PV. But in certain markets like Texas, like Arizona, we see people installing with one of our FlexBOSS 18 or 21, inverters with batteries only and no PV. And what they're doing is they're charging at a lower rate schedule and then discharging when the rates really increase.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of really cool stuff. I know we're getting close to the end of time here.
I got more questions. If
you got more questions, so yeah, I guess if you have some more questions, we'll wrap it up after that. But
no sweat.
Shoot away.
So one other thing that my mind just kind of races towards, another trend in the industry is, some of these backup power solutions, larger, more industrial or utility scale solutions. You're seeing a trend in purchasing or acquiring land, however they're going to work those contracts up, near those substations to have battery setups right integrated in with, utility scale substations to help support and play that arbitrage game on a much larger scale. Are you working with any partners right now that do that? How can I get in with those guys? And
oh, I'm so excited, but I can tell you this.
I'm testing John today, everybody.
I can tell you that I am really excited to announce what we have in the very near future. I am so excited. I am not allowed to say it yet, but I think the entire EG4 fan base and the entire EG4 community and the customers that we don't serve yet are going to be absolutely mind blown with the feature set and some of the products that we will be announcing in the near future. The goal is to be ready to deliver some of this stuff to the world, probably around the RE Plus trade show timeframe. So I'm really excited about that. I'm shaken to I want to just give everyone the good news. But
I don't know any secrets. I just
I gotta hold off. I solemnly swear that I have to hold off for right now. It's gonna be incredible. I guess the last question is, it's been a great journey, and we're honest here. I'll be the first to admit, we kind of just met. I know that you've been working with our team quite a bit, and I do check to see what installers are working with us, and I see your installations have just increased tremendously with our products. What are some of the things that what advice would you give to other professional installers that are looking to adopt our products into their lineup?
100%. In general, you gotta put the consumer first. And when you're approaching it from that standpoint, if you're putting yourself into your prospects or your clients' shoes and you're truly wanting what's best for them, that's ultimately what's going to feed the embers of what a healthy business looks like. And even earlier this week or last week in North DFW area, you had about 300,000 homes that were without power in McKinney, Allen,
massive windstorm,
Frisco, huge storm, right? So I know the roofers are out there mopping up right now, but if you're filing a claim and you're getting a new roof right now, there's no better time to go solar. And if you're truly seeking an economic gain and you want to really never have to redo your system again or, add on later on, it's so easy to go solar and batteries right now. EG4 makes an amazing lineup of products that is going to be tailored to your needs, right? If you are one of these homeowners, maybe you've got natural gas and you have a lesser demand or load for electricity, well, you don't need the 21K, you can get the 18K, right?
Yep.
And so you've got different sizes that's going to be best tailored for each home's usage profile, all with the same or similar amazing technical capacity and capabilities to back up your whole home. And that is something that a lot of people, like you mentioned, claim, and just truly is not the case. Here, it really is. It's straight up an automated transfer switch. What a lot of people don't really understand yet, and even this, right? I think this conversation is probably more tailored to the people that are more technical.
Yeah.
And what we've really identified in the market, what we do at the Solar Scouts, is we're trying to take these maybe sometimes complex systems and simplify it, distill that down in a nice, neat package for homeowners to understand.
Yep.
And today, your battery and inverter setup is comparable to standby automated generators, right? And so a lot of people think, they have this idea in their mind that batteries can't do what generators do. And at this stage, it's a farce, especially when you talk about your GridBoss. You can land 3 of these inverters into that GridBoss in parallel, which now you're just increasing your ampacity throughput. So even if you've got a 400 amp service coming in your home, right, you all have the diagrams that will coach the technical people on my team and on other install organizations' teams. Here's how you can back up every single load. And I mean, going back to overdriving these concerts, like if you've never been to a concert, A, that's silly, go to a concert. And B, think about the bass that you feel at those concerts. Think about the decibel level of volume that it takes. And that is some high demand, high load speaker and audio technology can require a huge amount of electricity.
Huge amount.
And historically, those shows and concerts, you had this background noise of a huge and loud gas or diesel generator. So this white noise that now you got to go even louder on your speakers to overcome that. This is a much more neighborhood-friendly solution, far quieter, no carbon monoxide emissions, no utility delivery requirement. If you've got a propane setup, right? What if your propane company can't get to you in a freeze scenario?
Yep.
So long as the sun shines the next day, you've got a cyclical solution. So that way you could never lose power again with comparable or sometimes even better output than what a gas power generator.
I agree. You got me thinking about the BOSSBOX again. Now I'm like, man, let's just switch to that away from the generator. Well, Mr. Nick Manto, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, I'm Nick Manto, founder, CEO of the Solar Scouts. Thank you so much, John and EG4, for having me on the show today. Find our websites, thesolarscouts.com. We're all across all socials. Follow us on YouTube, at the Solar Scouts, Instagram, at the Solar Scouts, Facebook, TX Solar Scouts. We are an electrical contractor, an EPC, engineering, procurement, construction firm here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In the last few months, we've done installations in Mission, Texas, on the border, Houston, Central Texas, DFW, Lubbock and Amarillo. I'm a Red Raider Recom Tech. And so for those reasons, if you need me to come out to Lubbock, I'll be there. Let's get some tickets to the basketball game. Let's go Red Raiders in this March Madness season.
I love it. I love it. And my fiance she's a Red Raider as well. So that's awesome. Yeah, it's been a great show. Everybody, we thank you so much. Thanks to our friends at the Solar Scouts here. Thanks for tuning in to the Power Hour. And as you know, it's EG4. Power more with EG4, energy generation for everyone.